Welcome back, everybody. Tuesday, August 28th, 2018, 1:44 p.m. We are looking at current temperatures of the U.S. We have a distinct line going across, basically from the Great Lakes down across the northern end of Texas into Mexico. This is due to a jet stream dip we've been talking about last couple days. That is causing higher elevations of Montana and Wyoming to actually see snow. That includes the Rocky Mountains. Not going to last too long, but still a little early in the season to be seeing snow, in my opinion. But that is due to our jet stream. Now, what I did here is I pulled up a chart on nullschool.net. This is a wind chart, and you can kind of get the jet stream pulled out of this if you use the right settings. And you can clearly see this dip is right just past the states of Washington and Oregon, right in this area, and it basically dips over Idaho, then down into Utah, over the Rocky Mountains, and then goes upwards over the Great Lakes. Now, what this is doing is allowing the cold air from the polar areas and Canada to move down south into the U.S., and the uplift going over the Great Lakes is allowing the warm air from the Caribbean to move up into the northeast, which is why there's a heat wave on one side and cold weather on the other side. And this is directly related to why we are having this severe weather in states like Wisconsin, Iowa, and Minnesota, especially the west areas of Wisconsin where there were water rescues, mudslides, and significant flooding overnight last night. That is going to continue through today into tomorrow, and then, like we talked about, this will shift across Lake Michigan into the state of Michigan itself, which is currently under, basically the entire state is under flood watches and warnings. And this is our 4 to 5 day rain chart. You could see some areas getting upwards of 5 to 6 inches of rain. You could see here in parts of Missouri, a lot of this is in Iowa, and then it kind of shifts to the east. And this is not going to exclude Michigan here, because Michigan, like I said, is currently under flood watches and warnings, as you can see here where all these green county by county lines are. And then that line from the jet stream cutting right through it, causing that line between the heat wave, the moisture exploding over the Great Lakes, and then the dry, cooler air to the west. Again, the jet stream is the reason this is happening. That downward bend and the upward bend allow warm air up and allow the cold air down. That's what you have to remember with the jet stream, at least when it comes to why certain areas get more rain than others, and especially this time of year. Now, with that said, let's move on to the Pacific and our new storm. This is Tropical Depression 16E, just a few hours ago, named a tropical depression from an invest. Next step will be a tropical storm. That's when it will receive its name, which would be the name Norman. We have a Miriam here, which is being pretty stubborn. 65 miles an hour and 999 millibar pressure. Same exact stats as we had yesterday around this time, so not much change with Miriam, but that is a good thing. And we can see here that Miriam is actually, by the time it wants to become a hurricane, according to the new data, it's going to take this northern hook and hopefully get out of the range of the main island of Hawaii. At the same time, unfortunately, there is a storm right behind Miriam, and that is 16E, Tropical Depression, just named a few hours ago. The next step would be a tropical storm. We spoke about this yesterday, as it was in that 90% range for a 5-day cyclone formation. This is now a tropical depression. The next step, again, is tropical storm. That will be Tropical Storm Norman. And then after that, guys, this disturbance went from 20 to 30% fairly quickly. This is a separate system, also following 16E. Now, if we take a look at tropical tidbits here, you're going to see something pretty wild. You're going to see a string of hurricanes, basically like we saw last season in the Atlantic Ocean, and you're going to almost see it backtrack into the bottom part of the Caribbean. And that is concerning to me, because just as easily as these storms are forming in the Pacific, almost like a conveyor belt, these storms are going to start forming in the South Caribbean, and that is going to put the Gulf of Mexico at risk, including Cuba, obviously, and then South Florida, and then we do have action going on in the Atlantic Ocean, including a possible invest. But let's look at this first. You could see here in the screen we have Miriam. You're going to see it make that northern hook, and just picture the big island of Hawaii right out in this area. So Miriam looks like it's going to clear Hawaii to the north. But then what we have to worry about is the storm after Miriam, and that is Norman, obviously. And Norman is going to be up in this area, and Norman wants to take a southern dip and then just head straight west, according to the data we have right now. You see right here as we enter the 30th and the 31st, Miriam goes in the northern direction, and then it looks as if Norman wants to make that southern dip underneath it, almost a Fujiwara type of effect where two hurricanes interact with each other, one getting spun in one direction, one going in the other. Usually one survives. Now, I don't think these will be in contact, but you could tell that Norman actually makes a southern dip because of the existence of Miriam, if that makes sense to you. Now, this is going to put Norman on a path towards Hawaii that may become concerning in the next 5, 6 days if it stays on this path. You could see Norman moving right in this area, straight to the west. That is not good because that is exactly where the big island of Hawaii is. And then all you see after that, which we will get into in the coming days, is basically hurricane after hurricane after hurricane forming in the Pacific Ocean. We have 1, 2, 3, and then a fourth almost forming in the South Caribbean. Now, the reason I'm even bringing this chart so far is because there's somewhat of a pattern going on here. And you can see these storms, they form out in this area, but as we move into the beginning weeks of September, you start to see them forming a little sooner. They start to form right underneath Mexico before they cross the Baja region here of Mexico. And as we move forward here, you can see this storm is kind of forming right in this area. And then the next one forms a little bit sooner. And then as we get to the end of the data here, the storms are actually forming in the Atlantic side of this strip of land that connects South America and North America, and that's when we got to be concerned about the Southern Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, and in turn the Atlantic Ocean, which, like I said before, has a possible invest that we could be dealing with soon. It is a 20% invest. It's nothing super major as of right now, but we could see, according to this chart, the National Hurricane Center is watching this area. We are dealing with the same colors in the Pacific where all those storms are forming. This, in my opinion, is going to backtrack, and we're going to start seeing those storms form here, and we will see a period of time where we're going to get wave after wave of action coming off the west coast of Africa. Now, there's another chart here I have. Sorry about all this clicking around, guys, but it's the only way to show all the data. You're looking at the continent of Africa. Here is the border. Comes down this way. This would be the Atlantic Ocean. Off screen to the left would be the United States. And each one of these storms you see here is a wave with the potential of becoming a hurricane. And at the same time, we have this area of Africa that is producing all the sand that is basically barrel rolling down on top of these storms, keeping them from forming. Now, all we need is a break in this sand, and we could be dealing with one of these waves turning into a hurricane. Now, this is what we usually see this time of year is these groupings of storms. You can see there's clearly 1, 2, 3, and 4 separate systems here that are all working their way across the continent of Africa and then into the Atlantic Ocean. And then it's a matter of whether or not the conditions are right for these storms to stick together and become potential hurricanes. So, all right, a lot of info in a short period of time. Here is a live lightning chart of those storms that are currently going on by Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota. And then we'll move into Michigan. As we can see here, the lightning is very, very dense right now. That is actually a very, very big group of lightning that you're looking at right there. Very severe storms, and now I am beginning to see why they're having such issues with the flooding and the river levels rising and so on and so forth. And again, this is going to last a few days, so this is going to be something we're going to talk about again. Obviously, you could see that the Gulf of Mexico is lit up right now with lightning and storms as well. A lot of Louisiana, southern Louisiana is covered in those storms. And again, guys, we have Tropical Storm Miriam. We have Tropical Depression 16E, and then our 17th storm for the Pacific side would be this disturbance. If it does produce 30% chance over 5 days, they are becoming more and more rapid fire, it seems, as the action is pulling back towards the Atlantic South Caribbean area. So again, that is why I'm highlighting this area to be watched over the next few weeks, especially over the next few weeks. Again, as we transition from summer into fall. Here's just another view of 16E and Miriam. Again, 16E would be Norman and wants to dip under Miriam as Miriam goes north, and 16E moves to the west towards Hawaii. Unfortunately, that is just the reality of the situation we're dealing with. So, all right, with that said, there was a significant earthquake last night as well around 3 a.m. Indonesia has yet another 6.3 earthquake to add to its list. You can consider that in the Ring of Fire. It is a little bit inland to the west side of Australia, but still within that vicinity of the Pacific Ring of Fire, where most of our volcanoes and a lot of fault lines are. We've been seeing a lot of action with earthquakes. It set this buoy off clearly. You will see this thing pulsing for about 24 hours. And then once again, you get Tropical Depression Lane, which still exists right now. Should be dying off fairly quickly in the next couple of days, hopefully. And then obviously Miriam there. And then next Tropical Depression 16E, which will be Norman. After Norman, we could begin talking about Olivia, because Olivia would be that 30% that we are looking at right here. This would be letter O if this one forms first, which it looks like it will. And I believe that is it. For those of you in Wisconsin and Iowa and the surrounding states, please be safe. A lot of rain and moisture headed your way. If not already there. Here is the invest for the Atlantic Ocean. 20% chance over 5 days. That is what we just looked at on the chart that, where is that chart? There we go. We are looking at basically this is the invest right here, right off the coast of Africa. And we just talked about these groupings of storms. So, all right, guys, that's the up-to-date weather for basically the oceans and the continental U.S. for right now. Any abrupt changes, and I'll be on here to let you know. That's about it. Hope everyone has a great afternoon, and I will be back with an update hopefully later on this evening. If not, then first thing tomorrow morning. All right, guys, thank you so much. Everyone be safe, and we will talk very soon. Bye-bye.